Wow, there's a lot of people here. Assalamu alaikum. So happy to be here. 10 years ago, I used to occupy the same seats that you guys used to sit in. I was 15. I'm 25 now. And I was also a teenager, going to high school. And I know that having this kind of event would have been very beneficial for me. Brother Muhammad Kibriya asked me today to also talk about Muslim women in Islam, just give like a brief history of them in the past, currently, and how their legacy can inspire our legacy, inshallah. But before I start, there's a lot of girls that I see here today from the ICNA community. So shout out to my ICNA girls right there. So we have this exercise. At my masjid, we have a halaqah. So we meet every single Friday. I started this halaqah 2 years ago and have joined forces with the young Muslims of our community. And we alternate every single Friday, every other Friday. And in the beginning of every single halaqah, we have something very important to us called check-in. And we say our first name, and then we say the state of our hearts. Because we're a smaller group, our check-in lasts about 45 minutes, and they gave me 25 minutes to speak. But I think it's such an important exercise to just kind of gauge where you're at, which I think is a very important thing, that self-reflexivity, being able to just sit there, understand what your emotions are, and then at the end of a session, or at the end of a meeting, or at the end of the school day, or right after you pray Isha, you can do a checkout and therefore evaluate how you feel. This is something that I started doing when I was in school, and I still do it up until now. So that's like one of the things I want to impart with you. So we're going to briefly kind of do this, but I can't have every single one go at one time. So when I say 1, 2, 3, the first time you'll say your name. And then the second, when I say 1, 2, 3 one more time, you can then say how you're feeling, okay? We also have a rule. You can always say pass if your emotions are, you don't want to just share them. All right, bismillah. 1, 2, 3. All right. 1, 2, 3. All right, I want to just choose 2 people. I want to hear what their emotions are. Lena? Happy, all right. And I'm going to choose you. How are you feeling? Very what? Hungry. Can we give them something? That is an honest truth, all right. So I have quite a bit. Doing research, I did like 22 pages, but I understand I don't have all that much time. So inshallah, try to make this brief and focus on a couple of points. So just gauging, how many are actually in high school right now? Raise your hand. All right, so this is great. All right, afterwards, I want you to come see me because there's a really cool special project I'm working on. And I want to talk to you guys about that, inshallah. So today my talk, inshallah, will be centered around women in Islam, how they've shaped the past and continue to shape our current state and our futures. I'm going to talk a little bit about the importance of political activism and then give you a little bit about my story and how I felt the burn. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت إذا شئت تجعل الحزن سهلا فاجعل لي هذا سهلا. So when thinking about Muslim women, I think about the concept of glass ceilings, right? We live in a society, unfortunately, where there is one specific stereotype that is set of our identities. If we're not being labeled as terrorists, some people are thinking that we're about to get married to our cousins. Some people are thinking that we're docile. Some people think that we're shy. Some people think that we're meek. Some people think that we're uneducated. Some people that think that there's all these stereotypes that we're constantly carrying. And I know that as a youth, once a youth, I'm an adult now. But when I was younger, in the 7th grade, I started wearing hijab. And these feelings I was also carrying with me. Although Islamophobia wasn't defined or very much discussed in the media, it was something that we still dealt with. I remember in the 7th grade, I was walking down the hallway. It was during summer school, and this one kid removed my hijab. I think had I been older, I would have had a different response because I'm very strong, mashallah. But I just stood there and I cried, and I said, "Why?" And he was like, "'Cause you ugly." And then I cried some more. So, but now this thing has kind of changed, right? I mean, now in every single classroom, especially with all the political rhetoric, not just from, I think with Trump, being president, that has heightened it and it's made it much more visible. But I think maybe the past 4 years, there is this kind of heaviness you feel. I was invited to attend a meeting at work. I was selected, that bio was beautiful, but now I actually work in immigration with the US government. And in my office, I was selected to be one of 5 folks that were being sent to DC to discuss some of the things that we're experiencing in our center and how we can make them better. And when I entered into the room, subhanAllah, the entire room was white. And I quickly turned around, I identified a brother, he gave me a nod, I gave him a nod. What's up? So I could feel comfort. But as soon as I sat down, I was sitting with some people from Texas, from Vermont, and these are again 5 people from every single center in those spaces. But this, when I think of when was the last time I felt that uncomfortable, was probably then, subhanAllah. But I quickly snapped into my mode and that, operation of identifying how I'm feeling, which at that moment was a lot of anxiety, a lot of nervousness, and having to change my interactions with those that were around me to kind of, calm them down for them to accept me. Alhamdulillah, the interaction went super well. When I came back to my center, I wrote a newsletter about it. I presented an idea to them in a Shark Tank style, and it was really cool. Alhamdulillah, it was successful. So I know those feelings of anxiety, of carrying a whole bunch of, weight when you enter a room or when you enter a classroom is very much real. But if we can think about Muslim women in the past and what they've done and what their legacies are, I think it can kind of help shape our ideas. So when you think, what do you guys know about Khadija? Can someone raise their hand? Khadija radiallahu anha, the Prophet's first wife. Speak louder. She was what? Yes, Zawjat Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. She was the wife of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What about her? What about her characteristics? She was the first to become Muslim, yes, first believer. She was a businesswoman, key. She was what Lily Singh has coined Lady Boss of the Arabian Peninsula. She would take caravans into the Arabian Peninsula. She was a master in trade. She was the best of her kind. She's like Goldman Sachs. She's like all of these different companies combined together at that time. She actually funded the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in his business ventures because of his personalities, which were what? What was his personalities? The honest and yeah, good, right? So when we again think about these stereotypes that we have or that people try to label upon us, let us envision what Khadija was, right? She was strong, she was confident. That goes against what they think of us, right? They think that the Muslim girl in the classroom is just going to be like this. Yeah, you can have my homework. Oh yeah, you can copy me on my exam, right? That's all they think that we're about, but we are these confident women. I think I have about maybe 30 different examples. I went to the library and checked out books about Muslim women to try to really present, but I can't get into all of them. So I will share about three incidents, 3 women, okay? So subhanallah, so Aisha radiallahu anha, the Prophet's wife, after his death, a couple years later, she actually led an army into battle. So she was a leader in what she considered the cause of justice. Whether she was justified or not, no one questioned her leadership role. Number 2, during Umar caliphates, the women who were in the mosque challenged Umar because Umar came out and said, from now on, they're going to set a limit to the dowry that is payable to a woman when she becomes a bride. So one woman rose up and she said, you have no point in doing that. You can't do that. You're not authorized. And he looked at her and she said, because this is not in the Quran. And he responded by saying, that woman is right and Umar is wrong. So subhanallah, this is again an instance where there was a clear opposition coming from a woman, but she was not condemned for doing so. And the third, subhanallah, is very interesting. It's an amusing incident that sheds light on the relationship between the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and his wives, and is related in Ibn Ishaq, early biography of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. Umar heard that the Prophet's wives had a habit of talking back, clapping some hands, answering back, saying that they disagreed on specific things. So he went to his female relatives, whom were all related in one way or another, and he asked his cousin Salama, "Is it true that you speak your mind to Allah's messenger and answer him without respect?" Salama said to him, "With all that is wonderful, what reason do you have to come between Allah's messenger and his wives? Yes, by God, we speak to him our minds, and if he allows us to do so, then that is his affair. And if he forbids us, then he will find us more obedient to him than you." Umar realized that he had gone too far and withdrew. So I don't give you these examples to show that, we should be clapping back at, such a noble character and such a noble person in our lives, but to show you that, subhanAllah, women in our time had various different personalities, right? And they asserted themselves. There's so much in here that I can't really get into because I have some other things I want to discuss. But there was one woman from Nigeria. Her name was Nana Sara. In the 15th century, in the 16th century, she was a poet. She mastered astronomy, astrology, and would watch some of the wars that were happening in her town, and decided that she knew that if history was not recorded, then people would forget history. So she wrote these poetry that when people would read, it would describe a solution to the issues. So she had a poem that would address how to treat children post a war, right? How do you restore those societies? How do you help children? How do you help women? And subhanAllah, some of her poetry is being used in Afghanistan, or some of the teachings that she's instructed or she's provided in her writing is actually being used in Afghanistan by one of these NGOs. There are so many different women in our pasts that have incredible legacies, and I think we don't know enough about them, I myself included. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was born to a widowed mother. He was tended to by a slaved woman. He was fostered by a Bedouin woman. That's why the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ says what about women and mothers? Where does Jannah lie? Yes, wonderful, right? So, and also one more last story about a woman. It's through a slave, Hajar. I just recently went to Hajj. And Hajar, the mother of Ismail, that Islam traces its Abrahamic heritages. Right? To this day, Muslims drink from what water? Right? And they go around what? 2 mountains? So they're commemorating and they're paying respect and tribute to what a woman did. And not only just a woman, a slave woman. Right? This was a black woman. So for my black girls in the audience who sometimes feel unworthy, who feel, not respected, or who feel marginalized, and all the things that happen to women of color, I want you to draw particular inspiration from this woman's example. Because when I was going between those 2 mountains, wallahi, they're not mountains anymore, they're like green lights, but it was so inspiring for me. Like, I wanted to cry. And there's this one portion that you're supposed to, for the men, for them to run a little faster. I wanted to run faster too. But my mom was like, "Ayab ya bit." So this is just inspiration, some stories that you should pull from. There's Sumayya, the martyr. There's all these different women. And I really urge you, if you want, we can speak later and I can provide you with some titles of some books that really address what some Muslim women did. Now let's quickly move to just speaking a little bit about politics. Well, let me tell you the story about Bernie Sanders since they put it in the introduction. So, subhanAllah, so when I first came to the States at the age of 7, I came from Sudan. I spoke no English. In fact, my first week of school, my brother made me a sign that said, "I don't speak English." So I was walking around with a big sign saying, "I don't speak English." Was it a great idea? Probably not. This is why I had no friends. So I, went to a class there. Who's from Iraq? Anyone from Iraq here? Okay, cool. My first friend in America was a little boy from Iraq. His name was Muhammad. So when I was in the classroom, it was just me and him. It was a new ESL program that they created just for us. My teacher, her name was Miss Muskell. They sat me next to him and I cried. I guess I was a crybaby then. And I said, "I don't want to sit next to a boy," probably in Arabic, because she didn't understand me. So he kept sitting next to me because those were the assigned seats. So I took a ruler and I broke it on him. So they sent me to timeout. I guess we were a little crazy in Sudan. I don't know. I went to an all-girls school. It was hard for me. So they sent me to, I guess, to to talk about my anger issues at the age of 7. They contacted my dad, and my brother who understood English, my eldest brother Muhammad, was able to facilitate that conversation. Let me not embarrass myself anymore. I promise I'm not violent. So subhanallah, like that kind of initial interaction in a classroom was very difficult for me because that school didn't know how to handle people like me. I didn't speak English. I would go to the following year, Miss Muskell left the school. There wasn't an ESL teacher. I was put into this English class and the teacher would give me this piece of paper and all these prompts where people had to answer the questions. I didn't know what it said, so I would literally rewrite the sentence. I have good handwriting. So I felt like I had to kind of shed that fear, right, of being incompetent, right? I mean, I don't know, this is, I guess not if anybody will admit that here, but I lived a lot of my life feeling incompetent, feeling inadequate, feeling not enough, right? It was always something that had to do with the intellect. I silenced myself a lot. I didn't speak much, right? But subhanallah, I don't know, maybe it was this masjid. I used to come here all the time when I was little with my mom. I started to gain that confidence. And one thing that I promised myself is to speak even if my voice quivers. Even if nobody understands me or everyone thinks I sound like an immigrant, a perpetual immigrant, because when you're a Muslim woman dressed like this, you're going to be an immigrant for the rest of your life. Doesn't matter how much you're here, right? But anyway, so that's kind of been the theme. I remember when I was in my first conflict class in Mason, it was a theories course, and I didn't speak for 2 weeks. And the way that class worked is that if you participated, you get a 1 out of 5, which is 20%, which is an F. So if you speak and you debate, you get 20%. If you kind of hold your own, including the readings, and being really active in the class, you get a 5 out of 5, which is 100. So I needed to do that. So that also kind of brought me back. So being challenged through various experiences that I've had, which I'm pretty sure you guys are doing so too right now. Like I know what I'm speaking is something that you're also going through. Feeling of inadequacy, because I feel like that's just something that Muslim women and Muslim men also experience. So I went, there was a lot going on in the media. One time I opened the TV and I saw Ben Carson comparing Muslim Syrians to rabid dogs. And he said any Muslim that believes in Sharia but also is American must be schizophrenic. I think he's schizophrenic. Shouldn't probably say that because that's a mental illness. I take that back. So I went to this event, and while I was sitting in the audience, I was like, dang, man, I really like Bernie. I created a page on Facebook called Virginia Muslims for Bernie. It has like 5 likes. But so when I went to it, I was like, man, I like him. He's so wonderful. The only thing is I don't really know where he stands on Muslims. So I said the dua, Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli, and I swear to God, it was not me speaking. I felt like it was an angel that took over because I raised my hand. I'd already taken all the questions from the sections. He pointed at me, and I said, me, and he said, yeah, you. So I picked up the mic and I said, with the ongoing rhetoric that we hear in the media, Donald Trump, Ben Carson, the biggest bigots, as a Muslim American studying conflict analysis resolution and hoping to be a human rights attorney, hearing the rhetoric that on the media makes me sick because I'm always trying to raise awareness and make sure that everyone is treated equally in this world. And then he said, come, come, come. And I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, come, 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 come. So I came on the stage, and then he gave me the mic, and then he gave me a hug, and I was like, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. I have never hugged a man. I'm not about to start right now. And then but he's like, 90. So I guess that's okay. So then he was like, okay, this is great. So I asked him my question. And yeah, he was just hold my hand, and I'm so uncomfortable. I was like, I have to make wudu after this. My wudu has been broken. So then he answered really eloquently. It was amazing, but it's not just enough. And they ended it there because it was perfect for them. The next morning there was newspapers. I had the Washington Post. I was in a Rolling Stone magazine. I was on PBS NewsHour. All these different people wanted to talk to me. Imam Majid called me the next day and was like, Ben Carson campaign contacted him, and they said they wanted me to come join them. And I was like, hell no. Sorry. Ben Carson? Heck no. So I worked with Isra Shakir, and we put together an op-ed, and I contacted his organization. I said, I will give you my endorsement, I'm something, right? You can't have any fear, right? You have to know that you're competent. You can't just pretend. And then I was like, if you give me the opportunity to address your people and talk about Islamophobia and what they can do in their own communities and that which they offered, alhamdulillah. So that was kind of the moment. I went on to go to the Hill. I worked with Congressman Andre Carson, who's one of the Muslim members, and that was really interesting. Experienced some Islamophobia there. We experienced Islamophobia everywhere. But to each and every single one of you here, you have to remember that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لا يكلف الله نفسا. What does that mean? Okay, you? That's right. That's right. And earlier he said, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves you, he tests you, right? So whatever it is that you want to do, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you the capability and the ability to move forward and to push. Last thing, because I know I'm supposed to be off of here. So the midterms elections are right around the corner, and this is one of the most important cycles of our time. So much has happened this year, the Muslim ban and the child detention centers, and we really got to do something about it. So if you're under 18, there's a couple things you can do. Get involved in a club or organization within your high school, and if you're in college, that's something that you can also do. 2, for those that are in high school, you can pre-register to vote. Some states have that. Go look up and see. Number 3, figure out what issues you care about most and who the decision makers are. You can check out this website if you're already writing something down, usa.gov/local governments. And you can find out what kind of local issues are there and who's kind of the head of that. Number 4, you can help your friends and families get civically engaged. Number 5, you can volunteer for a campaign or a non-profit civic engagement. I invited Ahmed Abdullah from Engage. I don't know if back there, you can go talk to him. He's an organizer with Engage. They're the civic engagement organization locally here. And you have to remember that at the end of the day, involvement doesn't depend on one spectacular event to create a long-lasting change. It just takes you to do something about it. So I know I gotta go. Just believe in yourself. Pray your 5 daily salahs. Hold on to the rope of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because that's your best friend. Your friends will leave you and come. I think I speak to 2 people from high school, right? You'll make new friends. One of my high school friends in the back. Shout out to Suad, Susu, right? Pray your salah. Really hold on to your faith and believe in yourself and speak even if your voice quivers. Jazakumullah khair.